Get your pen and paper ready. It's time for another edition of The Flex. The absolute best fantasy football podcast in existence.
So I'll say this, not to say that I disagree, but...
I disagree.
Oh, my God.
Presented by Broadway Sports.
All right. Flexers ready?
All right.
Fournette.
We're 45 minutes in, so we've hit our cap for tonight. So
All right,
let's
done.
wrap
See
it
y'all.
up.
Yeah.
All right, now that we've been sitting here 45 minutes, I guess we can start the show. Welcome back to the Flex, coming to you recorded over the airwaves and live on your YouTubes. Head on over to BroadwaySportsMedia.com. It is a fantastic website that has a smorgasbord of content to occupy your time. Also occupying our time has been the recent news of drafts taking place, injuries across the fantasy football landscape. More news later in the episode about that and about the inaugural Broadway Fantasy League, announcing the 4 participants that will be joining Broadway. So hang around for that. We're also going to look at some of the other news and dive into potential draft strategies to keep in mind as you're going through some of these final drafts leading into week 1. So speaking of drafts, just to mention, guys, we completed our dynasty draft, and I got to tell you, that is 4 weeks of my life I will never get back.
That was
No
even
kidding.
the longest fantasy draft I've ever been a part of.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
3 days. Come on. It wasn't,
Yeah, that's
it
well-
wasn't that long.
3 days across like 3 or 4 different time zones and a bunch of different states. I mean, listen.
People not understanding how to turn notifications on an app. They just
Yeah, that was you.
Or
Because you're
downloading
like, oh,
an
I
app.
didn't even know it was my pick. Oh, blah, 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 blah. I'm going to complain about an hour clock, and then I'm
okay.
going to be
I would like
running
to say that I would usually take 20 to 30 minutes to make my pick, but I never got anywhere close to auto picking on anything. Not like a couple other people in our league.
I want everyone to
Wasted
understand
a whole day
that
on 3 people.
you just said
That was
20 to
terrible.
30 minutes per pick.
No,
Right,
I didn't go
he's
longer.
never
than
drafted a
2
real
years.
league ever because he waits 20 minutes to pick, and you only
Like,
get a
in a-
minute.
Yeah, in a normal draft, yeah, you get
Alright,
90
I'm
seconds.
sorry.
Hey,
I have a
his
life. I'm
internets
sorry,
and
my kid.
YouTubes were all screwed up.
Anyway,
We all have kids, Ryan. Get over it.
Not me.
Yeah, we all have kids.
Oh, we all have
you
kids,
seen
right?
Huxley?
Yeah, exactly.
He's very famous.
I would just like to say it was
Most famous
Fantastic.
kid on this podcast, Huxley.
fantastic to finally get through that draft and get that wrapped up and moved on. So
You
that we
were
could-
very impatient about it. Like, where do you have to go?
I know,
For
we
this
still
I was
have
Fantasy League.
suggesting
multiple
to move it
weeks.
to an hour limit so that we can maybe get through it by Sunday. That was-
But
think
why?
what was the-
What do you have to
purpose?
do?
Well, what? It's not like the season starts this
Yeah.
Sunday. You got a whole week.
Part of the problem was also that Ryan promised everybody a description or a little tagline about their picks.
I
It
agree.
ended after pick 8, and everyone
Oh,
was
wait,
really
it-
unmotivated to make a pick after that. Is
I
what I,
got
think.
through the second round and I gave up.
That's true because I was pick 9 and I was like, wait.
You know,
don't
you and
get
I both
one.
got screwed. 9 and 10.
I
Our
gave
picks
y'all
got
combined
screwed.
anyway. Whatever.
Yeah, combined.
Combined.
How's
Gave
that?
y'all
Can we
combined.
real quick, let's talk about this Dynasty League real quick. It's the first time for most of us doing a Dynasty League. And I noticed a big trend among the 9 and 10 10 team Dynasty League.
Wonder who
That was number 9 is Justin. Number 10 is Greenlaw, both on this podcast. They apparently highly respect my opinion because they kept choosing all the players that they've talked shit about that I have talked great about on this podcast. So I just want everybody to know, obviously listen to me.
I would like to know who I talked poorly about that ended
All
up
of them.
on my
Everybody you
team.
drafted.
I will admit
My
that
gosh.
that you think that I talked poorly about Joe Burrow when I was merely
No, you did. You did talk.
I was
poorly
merely
about him.
commenting on his status as a
Hold on.
rookie and what happens to
We
rookies.
can allow Zach to live in his fantasy world that we all
It's a reality.
agreed with him, his whole fantasy. So let's take that fantasy, put it in a little jar, put it up on the shelf. He can live in there. And let's move on to other fantasy news that has come out that may affect leading into the drafts. First of all, the big one, and maybe not a surprising move, but Leonard Fournette was released by the Jacksonville Jaguars. And leading up into this, I had my notes as well. He's being looked at by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He's been looked at by the Patriots. And right before we started, came on live, he got picked up by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Zach, I know you've drafted him. You've had him. How happy are you right now?
I am actually really happy, and everybody thinks that's fake happiness, but I'm actually very surprised. First off, I wrote an article that you can see on BroadwaySportsMedia.com about Leonard Fournette and me drafting him and his fantasy, outlook going forward. I got Raquel Armstead, who, by all intents and purposes, from every report that's out there, for the most part, 90% of reports, he's going to be the running back one week 1. Now, does he hold on to that for the whole season? I don't know. I don't technically need him to. I just, I picked him up for.
This is literally a week after you're saying, "Who is this guy?"
Yeah.
Have you seen these reports about James Robinson, the undrafted
Yeah, I
free
think that's
agent?
just bullshit. I really do. I think it's
People
kinda
close to
bullshit.
Jacksonville think that he has breakout potential. I'm
I
not
feel
saying
like I've
draft
seen more
him.
stuff
Where
about
did he even
Raquel
go to
than
college?
Robinson.
He went to Illinois State, like my cousin.
Yeah,
who
that's
played
not even a
gymnastics
real
there.
school. So anyway,
It is a real school. My
Real
cousin
quick on
go-
that,
was
there
a
is
scholarship
always that
athlete.
one guy in the NFL that comes out of nowhere, and for at least their rookie season, they overproduce.
Remember when everyone
that's Antonio
thought
Gibson.
Ben something, I literally don't remember his last name, was going to be the running back in Houston, and then this no-name undrafted free agent guy that nobody had heard of named Arian Foster took the job during training camp and exploded onto the scene. I don't even remember who the other running back was, but he was like heavily drafted in like the 13th, 15th round range. And then it was Arian who ended up being the guy. And I drafted Arian Foster that year, and I'm very proud of that.
Well, did
Feels
you
like
draft
in the 12
James
years.
Robinson?
I don't know if you should draft James Robinson, but I definitely
Okay,
think
well then
he's
nobody cares
a
about this
radar
James Robinson
name
kid.
to keep an eye on, and not necessarily just guarantee that Raquel Armstead is going to
Anyway,
be.
before I get
value.
derailed by this James Robinson hive, let's talk about that he's down in Tampa, and apparently, like I've always said, Bruce Arians is a fucking liar, and he can't be trusted. And I mean, this is crazy. I mean, literally hours ago, in the same league that I drafted Leonard Fournette in, someone posts the Ronald Jones owner, and I wanted Ronald Jones. He drafted him in the 3rd round, mind you. Sent out this thing about how Ronald Jones is so great and blah, blah, blah. And then they signed Leonard Fournette. I think that this means McCoy's gone, Dare Agunabala is gone, and
Dare
then,
Ungambawale.
and let me say this,
Bless
I'm
you.
not so sure that Keyshawn Vaughn isn't going to be out. He's out. This is a Leonard Fournette, Ronald Jones backfield. And let me remind you that Bruce Arians comes from the Steelers. Bruce Arians also had Chris Johnson and David Johnson, who were both actually fantasy viable for a year. But Rashard Mendenhall, Jerome Bettis, Rashard Mendenhall, Willie Parker, Jerome Bettis, all fantasy viable at the same time, and they were dual backfields throughout Bruce Arians' offensive coordinator career with the Steelers. It's not that crazy to think that Leonard Fournette in this offense with Ronald Jones, it's not that crazy that you have 2 RB2s. Is someone an RB1? No, nobody's an RB1 at this point. Maybe someone emerges. But this fantasy, Tampa Bay was, Bruce Arians has been in Tampa Bay for at least a year, right? So, in conclusion, he's seen Ronald Jones for a year. We saw what Peyton Barber did last year. Leonard Fournette is in the Peyton Barber role. RB2, and he's better than Peyton Barber. I'm pretty happy as a Leonard Fournette owner right now.
Well, plus you're going to get a lot of value with him catching the football. Ronald Jones, not a lot of experience catching the football out of the backfield. What does Tom Brady love to do? He loves to throw it to the running back. So I think you're going to get, especially in PPR leagues, I think there's a lot of upside there.
Yeah, if you drafted Fournette, I think you've got to be loving this news right now about where he's going and what he could potentially mean for the Bucs and for your fantasy team.
I would have loved it to be the Patriots because I had to drop Damian Harris to pick up Raquel Armstead, and I know I'm going to regret that move at some point this year.
Which league did you drop him in? Just curious.
Not the Dynasty League. I will never talk about my moves in the Dynasty League.
All right. So moving on, just a note that Joe Mixon signed a 4-year, $48 million extension. So that just, the reason that's relevant is because it squashes any rumor or any chance of him holding out for your draft. So feel free to draft him as normal. Got a payday. I don't really want to talk. I don't know if anybody has anything else there. We've talked about it on future podcasts. I just wanted to mention he's not holding out. He got his bag.
I didn't even know he was on not even attending.
Well,
He said he had migraines, which
There was that migraine
BS
scare,
excuse.
which as a person who's drafted Mixon in 3 leagues already, I was a little concerned of, but now I'm happy
Well,
and ready to
That
draft
money,
him.
Regardless if he was or
cure
not,
those
it-
migraines, guys.
right.
Migraines
Right.
are serious. Ask Percy Harvin.
It's true.
Either way, it takes care of the fact that he's not going to hold out. And that's all I want to say about it. But another cut, Mohamed Sanu. If we had a little bit of shocking news come out today that
That was
Mohamed
good.
Sanu was not going to make the 53-man roster, and I think when at face value, like, they just spent a second-round pick on him last year, 55th overall pick on him last year, and he's not going to make the team this year. Is this not the same guy that was playing under Julio Jones in Atlanta?
Well, he had his surgery, and I don't think he ever really bounced back from it. And I think that this is
I'm
more
just at
NFL
face
news
value,
than fantasy news, to be honest. I don't know how this.
I agree. I did like Sanu when he was still on the Pats because who else are they going to throw to? But I don't like him. And I liked him in a dynasty league where he was going to have time to recover and, way down in the lower 20th round or something like that is where I picked him up. But I can't see a place where he goes in and is fantasy viable this year.
It's fantasy news because stay away from it. Just if you're going through your rosters, you see a familiar name, stay away. Here's us telling you, stay away from it.
Yep.
That's the only reason I wanted to bring it up.
And Pat's fantasy situation got even more
very
disgusting
good.
than it was.
Yeah,
Damian Harris, still the guy to own.
agreed.
Yeah, so just don't drop him for anybody.
Yeah.
So
It's
the
between
other
him
one,
and AJ Dillon. I couldn't decide.
You kept Dylan?
Yeah, that 9th round keeper, building for the future.
Okay.
The Isaiah Wilson.
You
of
could do,
fantasy
you could
draft
do that in
picks.
fantasy football. You can't build for the future in real life.
so this next piece of news actually hurt my heart a little bit because I think in all of my drafts so far, I've targeted this guy, and I think I stole him from Greenlaw in our dynasty draft. Was Curtis Samuel.
You did, and I'm so glad you did.
And reports are that he's
What a
not doing
sucker.
very well in camp. And I just thought, but if you listen to, and again, I got caught up in the coach speak, I guess, but this was a super talented guy in college. And all the coach speak is that they were going to use him in multiple formations and multiple positions and really try to get him the ball. So I'm thinking, well, here's your guy who's going to take some of the pressure off of CMC and be another option in this offense. And then this isn't great news for me, just a couple of days after taking him in back-to-back nights for back-to-back fantasy drafts.
I mean, at the end of the day, he was a flyer, right? So it's not – I don't think it's hugely disappointing. Like, it sucks a little bit that he's not going to pan out, but I don't think expectations for Curtis Samuel based on ADP were super high. I think this makes DJ Moore – I think this makes DJ Moore a no-brainer third-round pick, and I had some reservations on DJ Moore earlier in the offseason about drafting him that high. But if Curtis Samuel's not there, the target competition for DJ Moore is so low. Robbie Anderson's in a completely different role. I even think Christian McCaffrey's in a different role. DJ Moore is going to get 130, if not 150 targets this year and could be a monster.
Yep.
So I'm regretting a little bit, but we'll see what happens. If anything, I may be able to start him a couple times in the flex. So we'll see. Moving back on down, J.K. Dobbins getting hyped for a significant role in the offense. And I think, and just to credit, when we talk about our handcuffs, and if I'm misremembering, I apologize, and you can correct it later or whatever, but I think you said that this season, at the very least, you're going to see Mark Ingram start off, and then at some point in time, J.K. Dobbins is going to take over. So if you have those as your handcuff, was your angle, Zach, I believe that you're going to be in good shape. Well, now it's looking like if you just drafted Dobbins to be a potential starter and a provider for your fantasy points, maybe looking pretty good.
Yeah, I think it's a good sign, but I also think it's not coach speak. It's just what you should have expected, right?
It's kind of coach speak.
It's kind of coach speak.
Is he going to say,
let's
no,
be
we're
honest.
not?
I mean,
we're not going to give him the ball. We drafted him high, but we don't like him,
yeah, but
actually.
he didn't have to say, hey, he's going to be involved. He didn't have to say he's going to be significantly involved. He could just say, oh, yeah, he's going to be involved in the offense.
Are we
we'll try to
Bruce
get him the ball
Arians
here
said
and there.
Ronald
Yeah.
Jones was the guy. You never know.
Yeah,
Well, Bruce
listen,
Arians is a
Arians
noted
fucking
liar.
Noted liar. And
Okay.
you know who's not a liar? John Harbaugh never lied in his
I
life.
wish I would have been
That's
on
true.
this so much.
This to me is like great. I like J.K. Dobbins before. I still like him. It doesn't actually change how I feel about him because it's not really concrete anything. It's just a coach.
It lets me
fucking well
know
about a
that
player.
Gus Edwards is
That's
not
fair.
not a
I do
threat.
think
Like
I
that's
don't
what
ever. I never
believe.
want. That's fair.
Right.
Yeah.
Put some of that to ease, and then maybe he takes over for Ingram a little ahead of schedule. We'll see. You still got to get these guys in games. All this being equal, still have to see them in games. We haven't been able to see that yet, and I haven't seen any Ravens practice. So, interesting note. I
I've
think
seen
that
all of them.
This
Well, we
whole
saw the clip of him catching a pass, mossing
Yeah.
somebody in the end zone.
So this all ties into the Mohamed Sanu because I think somewhere down the line that was the pick that was traded from the Patriots to the Falcons and then got to the Ravens, and the Ravens used that pick to pick up Dobbins. So it all ties together.
Nice.
So now the Patriots cut him, and the Ravens have Dobbins in that scenario. So moving down, another thing that's disappointing for me again, I guess I'm going to have a terrible fantasy year because I took Cam Akers as well, and all the reports are that there's nobody really claiming that number one role for the Los Angeles Rams.
Well, I think what you should do, Ryan, is post a list on Broadway of every player you drafted so that everybody else can avoid those people.
Yes,
Because it sounds like no matter what, something terrible is going to happen to them or they're going to get demoted. I think that's wise just for the sake of our listeners. But
You
I also
didn't draft Clyde, did you?
Not in the Dynasty League.
No,
that was Zach.
I did.
I drafted him. I
Yeah,
drafted
exactly.
Clyde. I drafted Clyde in my other league of record.
Oh, you did draft him.
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
Wow.
I'm not
Well,
worried
we're
about
down
pick.
on Clyde.
But I picked 11th. I thought that was great value getting him at 11.
It
Oh, that is
very
good
good
value.
value.
So, I mean, he fell to me 11. I'm going to take him. Sorry.
So like I wrote about Cam Akers, about Fournette possibly landing in the LA Rams scene because there were reports that nobody has been the man in camp. And then you hear today that apparently, what's that old ass offensive lineman?
Whitworth. Yeah.
Yeah, Whitworth is talking really great about Cam Akers. Listen, Cam Akers ain't even getting any airtime on Hard Knocks.
He did a little bit.
I'm
Come on.
out. I'm out on Cam Akers.
Tiny bit. They didn't give him like a 5-minute montage like they.
Yeah, well, I mean, they gave David Johnson like a whole fucking episode back in Arizona for All or Nothing. So I'm out on Cam Akers.
I think if you're betting on
Pink
someone, though,
rocks.
talent-wise, that's the guy to bet on still from their backfield because
I'm going to hold on to it because
yeah.
what else am I going to do?
Yeah,
for sure.
I had someone drop Jalen Reagor for Malcolm Brown in a league recently because they're so scared of Jalen Reagor.
bold.
Thoughts?
Bold.
Very bold.
How are they scared? What are they scared of? The injury?
Yeah.
that he sucks, which might be true, but Malcolm Brown really sucks.
Hot tip: Deshaun Jackson. You should start him week 1. Maybe never again. But
I
week
know.
1.
That's what I was looking at when I picked him up in the Dynasty League. I saw that he had like 30-something points last year in week 1, and then he was out the rest of the year.
I saw a tweet, and I wish I could credit whoever tweeted it, but that like every single week 1 he's ever had has been amazing, except for like a couple of seasons, and he's had a long career. So
Because he had a really good start to the year 2 years ago with Fitzmagic. And then because he gave him, his chain and everything else to wear in the post game because they were, connecting so well. And then afterwards, you didn't hear anything of him.
That fizzled out real quick. Well, moving on, just
hey,
a couple more notes here for news before we move on to some other bulk in our show tonight. The Washington football team announced Dwayne Haskins as their starter officially. I think that anyone who, I'll be honest with you, as just a human being, I am scared for Alex Smith. I do not want him to take another live snap in his life. I listen, I commend him. He did a great job coming back. He did a great job getting healthy enough to be cleared, right? So I'm very happy for him there. I'm happy for his family. It was a nice little scene. Now, just hold a clipboard, be done. Collect your paycheck out, help Haskins out as much as you can, but don't ever get back in there. I am so scared to death for him. Anyway, off my rant there. But how are we feeling about Dwayne Haskins based on he did get some experience last year, where he's at this year? I mean, I don't see him being a draftable guy, but knowing that he has been named the starter, does that affect anything? It's not unclear at the start of the season, at least.
I think
I'm
it
not
helps.
drafting Terry McLaurin that high.
No, but I think it helps Terry over Alex Smith being the quarterback.
yeah. This is what we expected. So this is also a thing that feels more like football news than fantasy news because I don't think much changes from really anybody. I'm as in on Antonio Gibson as I was. I like Terry McLaurin, maybe not enough to draft him where
Next time,
some people like him. What?
you make the news next time if you're not happy with
Oh, I just want people to – I'm just saying for people who are reading these news items and are wondering, oh shit, does this affect my fantasy team? It's like this
Well,
one probably doesn't.
Oh yeah, but if they're
Items.
announced a starter, we're just helping people out by saying, even though he's been announced a starter, he still shouldn't be on your radar to draft as a quarterback.
Exactly.
I still think that it's a downgrade for Terry McLaurin. And let me say this. Look at the defenses that he's going to be playing at the beginning of the year. Those first 4 weeks, stream those defenses because he's probably going to throw a lot of interceptions.
I don't think there's any way it's a downgrade for Terry. Alex Smith's leg is still misshapen and he's still limping. So there's no way that quarterback is better than
Yeah, but Dwayne's
Haskins.
arms are messed up.
Yeah, but have you seen Colton Hookem McCoy?
Yeah,
Right.
but he's
Yeah.
a free agent, right? He's not
Yeah.
even
I,
on the
I
Redskins
swear,
anymore.
if you would have told me that we
Or
would have
the
spent as
football
much
team.
of this preseason as we have on the Washington football team, I would have called you nuts because we have spent way too much podcast time on that team.
All right, then let's get past it, host.
Yeah, one last year, just to get the shot in, the Bears refused to name a starter. It may
'cause none
never
of 'em are
name an
good.
official starter. I mean, they have
Y'all
to. I guess.
remember when Graver said that Nick Foles was like the guy up in Chicago?
I
'Cause
do. He
remember
said that Allen Robinson was going to be wide receiver
Yeah.
1 after becoming Nick Folesian.
All right.
He was
I
pretty.
said
He was
that
pretty
the floor
confused on
in
the
Chicago.
situation.
I said the floor in Chicago is pretty confused because either, and I mean that in our euphemism way, because either Trubisky will step his shit up or he'll get benched for Nick Foles, who is not good, but he's not as bad as Trubisky was last year, which was the worst quarterback in the league, pretty much.
It's still not a great situation. And I don't love it for anybody
Yeah,
there.
I agree.
It's a nice little quarterback by committee situation you got there.
If I saw that during my drafts, if I saw that CHI next to anybody's name, I just scrolled past. I didn't even read who it was. I didn't care. I was like, just get off my screen. I'm not putting you in the queue. I don't care.
I
You're
think that's fair.
You're done, son. So speaking about strategies during draft and avoiding certain teams and looking through, we just completed our dynasty as we've spoken. We have a couple more coming up, and we had our own personal drafts. But just to talk for a second here about draft strategies, I want to start. What positions do you guys, and we'll start with you, Greenlaw. What position do you generally go into a draft? What is your strategy to attack first? And does it depend on where you are and that kind of thing?
So I think you have to, I know JG is going to give me a counter to this later, but I think you got to attack running backs early. In the first 5 rounds, I'd like at least 2, possibly 3 running backs. Because if you look at how the board's kind of coming down at pick 30 or ADP 31 right now, Chris Carson is coming off the board. And then after him, I don't love Chris Carson, but he's the last sure-ish running back left. And then after that, it really spirals down. Then you gotta bet on an Antonio Gibson or Matt Breida, someone like that. But after pick 31, you're not gonna have a sure thing. You're not gonna have a RB1. So I would, where you are gonna get some wide receiver value later on. After the 3rd round, running backs dropped off 100 points. So if you drafted a running back in the 1st round, they averaged 279 points. If you drafted them in the 3rd round, they averaged 179. So that's a 100-point drop off. The drop off isn't as bad with wide receivers. So I would draft running backs early. I tend not to draft quarterbacks very early, but if one fell to me in the 4th round, if Lamar or Mahomes or maybe even Dak fell to me in the 4th round, I'd consider it. But I'm trying to stay away from quarterbacks and tight ends in those first 5 rounds and really going after running backs and wide receivers.
So, JG, we'll get into the no running back strategy in just here a little bit, but just let me go to Zach next. Do you have a similar mindset there about drafting your running backs, or is there a certain position you're looking for to target early for yourself?
Running backs are harder to come by, but it also depends on where you're at in the draft. So I go with the top 12 strategy in most redraft leagues. And the top 12 strategy is in those first 12 picks, I'm not picking a quarterback. I'm not picking a mandatory tight end. I'm not picking a kicker. I'm not picking a defense. All that's for 12 and later. I am building up the depth of my roster and building up with almost best player available in most scenarios. Sure.
You mean 12 rounds, your own roster?
I call it
Okay.
12 rounds, the first 12 rounds.
Your 12 picks, not the 12 overall picks.
Yeah. I go my personal 12 picks. I go top 12. And that what that means, my first 12, I guess you should say, first 12 is I look at it from, if I'm picking 12th, I'm probably going wide receiver, running back. It doesn't really matter if you're going running back, wide receiver, running back. But typically I'll take one from one roster, one for the other, and then I'll probably go another running back in round 3, and then I'll go on a string of wide receivers. And the reason is that you can find that 7th or 8th round running back that will be a complement for the bye week, but wide receivers, there's a lot of depth, but there's not a lot of quality depending on what kind of league you're in. And I think that the 7th and 8th running backs, like those 7th and 8th round running backs, aren't as good as the 7th and 8th round wide receivers. So it's a strategy that is not a strategy, I guess. It's basically, my strategy is don't draft a quarterback, don't draft a wide defense, don't draft a kicker, and don't draft tight end until you're out around 12.
Yeah.
Because you don't know how everybody else is going to draft. So it's really hard to plan, okay, I'm going to go wide receiver in the first 2 rounds, or I'm going to go running back. Well, you don't know how everybody else is going to react to what other people are doing.
Right. On that note, though, with watching other
it's a little bit less going on the offensive and a little bit more being reactive, I guess.
Yeah.
And sometimes that can work, sometimes it doesn't, but don't let the panic set in. It's like when Leonard Fournette, and I wrote about this, it's like when Leonard Fournette, was cut. I'm sure every Leonard Fournette owner that had already drafted was looking to cut him and try to make a big trade that was going to end up biting them in the ass in the long run.
Right.
So saying, you gotta think, going into stuff like the playoffs and everything, don't panic.
No, that's not what I meant.
I realized that after I said it.
Talk about it. You kidding me?
So what I'll say,
Playoffs?
you had a good point there about being reactive. And what I would say, my only piece of advice before we get to JG is that have in mind who you're targeting when you're going from round to round, but also have a backup plan, and then a backup plan to your backup plan, because the worst feeling in the world is when you're targeting that one guy and all of a sudden he gets scooped up a pick or two before you. And now you're scrambling with 30 seconds to pick. That's not a good place to be. Also pay attention to the guys that are picking right behind you. For example, if you're into the 3rd or 4th round and they've just picked 2 running backs in a row, then more than likely they're either going one of the top, I don't want to say top quarterbacks, but they're going the probably best available receiver or someone in that group. So if there's a guy in the receiver that you really want at that point in time, pay attention to that, because he's probably not making it back around to you, obviously, but just kind of look at that and see how your draft is going around you. And sometimes that can lead you at least to what position they may be targeting, and that can maybe help you out in your decision, possibly.
Definitely. And to go back real quick to what Zach said, I try to be as risk adverse with my picks until I have a starting lineup filled. I'd like to have as many sure things as possible. So if there's a question as far as I'm in pick, let's say I'm in like the 4th round and there's Tyler Lockett or Le'Veon Bell, but I need a running back. I'm not going to go Le'Veon Bell because he's not a sure thing. I'm going to go Tyler Lockett, even though I might have a couple good wide receivers already. I think he's going to be an amazing wide receiver. So I'm going to go with the guy who's consistently put up numbers, not the guy who's feuding with his head coach.
That's a great point. JG, any advice that you'd like to add on that hasn't been said?
Yes, I have a contrarian point of view to add, and not necessarily contrarian, but I do think there is an element to, there is value to be had. You can maybe gain an advantage by going in the opposite direction that the mass trends are going. And that said, I personally have left most of my drafts and mock drafts that I've done this year with 2 running backs in the first 2 rounds. Because, I mean, this is to Greenlaw's point about how the running backs starting in the 3rd round, your drop off is massively significant from the first 2 rounds to the 3rd round running backs. And the reason for that is because everyone is picking running backs early. So I think there's 2 ways to go. I mean, I personally am into picking 2 running backs early. I mentioned that already. But Devontae Adams, DeAndre Hopkins, Tyreek Hill, there is a group of receivers that if any of those three guys in the second round, if they fall to you, could end up being more valuable than an RB2. And I think we often get into this positional panic where, like, because running back is a very visible and important position in football in general, and B, it's high up on your roster just in the construction of most fantasy league sites, that you think you need to have two really good running backs. But, like, if your flex is as good or better, nice, than your opponent's RB2 because you opened your draft by taking a receiver, 3 receivers in the first 4 rounds or whatever, then you may not need to be as strong as at RB2. So I also think there's a lot of value to be had in the tight ends, George Kittle, Travis Kelce. Now, I'm not going to say you should draft them in the first round, but I have seen that idea touted out there that you should draft them in the first round. But I don't think the second round is too early for those guys, because the drop-off, for the same reason that you got to get a running back early, the drop-off for the tight ends is the most significant. And Kelce and Kittle are as sure as it gets in fantasy football, barring injury. Both guys are even due in 2020 for touchdown aggression, as you guys like to call it, after not scoring a lot, especially with lots of red zone looks. I think Travis Kelce scored 1 touchdown in the red zone off 10 targets last year. I'll have to correct that if it's wrong, because I'm just saying that off the top of my head, but I think it's something like that, which is crazy.
You just make up a lot of stats, I notice.
I do. Well, I like see stats and then I don't remember the exact numbers, but like they were good stats. So I want to say, yeah, exactly. I got YouTube to correct myself with. So watch the YouTube version for the full exact numbers. Podcast listeners, you're just going to have to, assume that it's approximate. Or go to YouTube.
Come on.
Yeah, do both. But anyway, if you did want to go 0 RB, I think there is a way to do it. Now, 0 RB, I think, often gets misconstrued for, like, don't draft any running backs, and that's not really what it means. Like, 0 RB strategy still can say to draft a running back in the first round, especially if you have a top 3 pick. You're definitely taking Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley, or whoever else you want. Alvin Kamara is a great pick at number 3, or
who told you
Zalier.
This? Who told you that 0 RB means you don't draft 2 running backs? Or, like, it doesn't mean that you don't draft 2 running backs in the first
I
round.
would like it to be known that if you draft 0 running backs in your draft, you will lose. Don't ever do that.
Agreed.
Yeah, but
Actual
0 running
RB.
backs means you don't draft in the first 2 rounds. You go wide receiver, wide receiver, or
No, that's not what it means.
Everything I've seen says that. What Zach's saying.
That's
you
not
don't
necessarily what
draft
it
in
means.
like the first
you can take
4
a running
rounds.
back in RB in round 1 and still be on a 0 RB path.
Well, that
what
sounds
it really
like it's
means,
a 1 RB path.
it's the name 0 RB. It doesn't necessarily. It's not necessarily literal every time.
Well,
I mean,
the
you guys
zero
are looking at me
seems
like crazy.
pretty
but
literal
trust
to me.
I mean, are you guys seriously questioning this? Because we can go pause the podcast and look it up right now. But I'm telling you that what
Zach's looking it up.
truth
No
is.
pause needed.
No
You
0
guys go
RB
ahead.
strategy.
You
By
guys
the
go
time you're
ahead.
done your diatribe, Zach will have it. Just continue.
No 0 RB strategy is going to tell you to take a wide receiver over Christian McCaffrey with the 1.1 pick. You're still taking Christian McCaffrey. You're still taking your sure thing running backs in the first round. Where 0 RB comes into play is the middle rounds, starting as early as round 2, running through 7, 8, or 9, because the value there is not there. The running backs you're taking in that range do not have ceilings. They have maybe high floors. It's exactly the scenario you described, Le'Veon Bell versus Tyler Lockett. That's like every single decision in the 3rd through 7th rounds. It's not exactly that, but it's like that kind of example where it's like an older or maybe an injured or a not role-defined running back that you're like hoping takes over the job maybe, versus a solid receiver who may not be like a top 5 NFL target getter type of guy, but he's still going to be solid. He's in a high volume passing attack. You have guys in that range like Juju Smith-Schuster, Calvin Ridley, all these receivers that are due for huge target volumes. Adam Thielen, Amari Cooper, Allen Robinson, DJ Moore we mentioned earlier, Robert Woods, Keenan Allen, Cortland Sutton, DK Metcalf, Stephon Diggs, Devontae Parker, Terry McLaurin, DJ Chark, Marquise Brown, Michael Gallup, Tyler Boyd, Will Fuller. I mean, the list is insane of receivers that you're passing on for running backs that are going to get you 6 to 8. If they fall in the end zone, maybe they get you 12 or 14 points. Maybe they have 3 or 4 RB1 weeks. That's high estimate. Like that's on their best season. They'll give you 3 or 4 RB1 weeks in the year for the whole duration of the year, when you could take guys that are going to be starters that you can play the matchups with at wide receiver. And if you take like 7 wide receivers in the first 8 rounds, you're guaranteed not guaranteed, but you're almost guaranteed that 3 or 4 of those guys are going to be viable starters every week. Leagues matter. Your league rules matter. If you don't have to draft a tight end, like in Zach's league, don't draft a freaking tight end, because tight ends are not going to give you more value than a running back or a wide receiver in your flex spot unless Kittle or Kelsey are falling because nobody's drafting tight ends, right? That's the only scenario that a tight end pays off in that kind of league. A 2 QB league or a super flex league, you're going to need a second QB earlier.
I'm going to disagree with you real quick on the tight ends in the Dynasty League, because it got to a point to where, like, I was looking at, like, Hayden Hurst, who I think is going to have a big year, and all the other receivers and running backs.
He's going to have a big year for tight ends, but he's not going to have a big year.
Okay, let me finish. At that point in the draft, which was like round 47 or whatever it was, the reason I took him was I took a chance because, like, I think that he's going to, at some point in time during the weeks, produce more points than anybody else I'm looking at. And I was just looking for a way to find fantasy points at that point in time. It wasn't a positional thing that late for me because he was dropping so much. The reason I don't even know if I took Hayden Hurst. This was just a thought I was having. And I ended up taking some tight end at some point in time. I have to go back and look. I haven't looked at that Dynasty because there's 30 names on my roster to go through. But the reason I was doing that is because every other I had them all lined up, all the other wide receivers and running backs. Like, half these guys are going to get maybe 2 points a game tops. And at that point in time, I'm just drafting something to have some points on my bench that if just everybody's been decimated for that week, I have someone that I can just put in. So that's what my only thinking was that late in the draft. Otherwise, I definitely agree with you.
I get that, but I also don't agree with that strategy. And the reason is because, like, with all due respect, we're not going for second or third place, right? You have to take, you have to swing for the fences.
That was good.
In your middle to late rounds. You have to pick guys that aren't going to be like looking through the running backs in those rounds. Like, we know that there are certain guys that are probably going to finish as a top 30 running back, like a James Conner or a Melvin Gordon or a Devin Singletary maybe, or
these guys are
some
way
of
off
these
the board,
guys,
though,
Chris Carson. Well, I know, but I'm talking about people's regular drafts. These types of guys that are going to be like solid and like finish the year high, but they're not going to give you those winning weeks. And fantasy football ultimately is a week-to-week league where your entire season is going to go through phases where the first 4 to 5 weeks you're relying heavily on the players you draft. And then your team morphs and changes and players get hurt, and players that you never expected to be good are good, and you can try to pick them up off waivers, and players that you thought were going to be key pieces of your roster are just complete busts and you have to drop them. You make trades. Things happen in your league where, like, your draft is only a small part of it. And that's why I want to say, like, back to the don't panic thing. Like, there's no reason, if you're sitting there and you already have 3 receivers and you only have 1 running back, and you're looking at your board and you're afraid that, like, I'm about to draft a guy that's going to slot into my bench when I could take a running back that's going to start. I still advocate, unless there is a really high ranking running back on your board that happened to fall to that pick, I still advocate for taking the better player, even if it's a receiver, even if it's a player that you're not going to start, because you don't know that the top 3 receivers you drafted are going to be healthy all year, are going to live up to your expectations all year. But you take those chances that you get the guy who was Chris Godwin last year, who was a 4th or 5th round pick, depending on your league, and ends up being wide receiver like 2 or whatever he was. And that's the kind of way you win your league, is you don't take that RB2, you don't take, David Montgomery just because you need a running back. You take the next receiver because that's a guy who could be a league winner at some point in your draft, Devontae Parker, whoever it is. So that's the long spiel. I mean, if you only end up with 1 running back in the first 10 rounds, don't consider your draft a failure by any means. You have a chance to really get some value at other positions. I mean, it's kind of crazy, but, like, I'm assuming
it is.
I
Crazy.
think that
Kelsey.
Justin is. I
I
literally think Justin is trying to tell people that are going to be in this fantasy fan league with Broadway Sports, hey, it's okay, just don't draft any running backs. So
And
he
then
can
he's
going
to
to
take all your running backs.
In that scenario, if you ended up with Travis Kelsey or George Kittle and Patrick Mahomes or Lamar Jackson because they fell in another extra round or 2, like, I don't think your roster is in bad shape if your RB2 is someone you have to pick up off waivers in week 3, because we see waiver claim running backs end up being the starters every year.
Yeah, that's
Obviously,
too many variables, though. You're banking on
sure.
getting that waiver selection, and more than
and all
likely
the
you're going to
draft
get a
picks
guy
I
who's
mentioned, but the
think it's a
reason I
little
mentioned all those
extreme.
draft picks is you passed on running backs because great guys at other positions fell.
No,
That's what
I'm in
saying.
favor
It's-
of doing best player available, but I think at some point you got to fill out your starting lineup.
Well, here's the thing is
And
that
it can't be in the 11th round.
It can be, though, because towards the end of the draft, you have guys going super late, talking 93 overall, Marlon Mack, who could be a starter for your first 5 weeks while you're trying to find that waiver wire guy. You have Matt Breida, 106 overall, Zach Moss, 123 overall. Where's Chase Edmonds going? 158 overall. Antonio Gibson, 160 overall. Justin Jackson.
Podcast is going to draft like 3 of those guys super early because they're listening to our advice.
Well, I'm saying you draft those guys in double-digit rounds, and not all of them are going to be good. You know, Tony Pollard is another guy. Carlos Hyde's another guy. Not all of them are going to be good. But if one of those guys is good enough to give you 6 to 8 points in your RB2, and you got a great tight end and a great flex, so you don't need 15 or 20 points from your RB2, then you're going to be in pretty good shape. And if Kenyon Drake, who's already in a walking boot, gets hurt, you got Chase Edmonds, who's going to be a starter. You know, I think that's the way to build your roster for a maximum upside, which is how you win drafts. Is you're the best team. You're not the third best team. You're not the safe 5th best team. You got to reach for the stars.
Do you want to win drafts or do you want to win championships?
Well, you win your draft.
At that point, hold on.
Your
I have
team
seen so many
morphs.
times, and I've been a part of this where I drafted and I had the best. Because a couple years ago, I can't remember which service it was. If it was Yahoo or ESPN or who it was, they would actually give grades out for who the draft. And they would say, "Here's your draft winner."
Yeah, which is based on their own pre-draft rankings. Which is
I know, but if you just looked at that, you would say that person who won the draft. Obviously, that person never won the league though. Like it's just so many.
And I usually get an F for those draft ranks because I do what I'm talking about. And then my team's really good every year. And then my team's really good every year because I got the most value out of these other positions, and the stupid computer system that grades way too highly on your RB2 doesn't value.
I'm sure
the
those
same
Buffalo
thing
Bills teams that I kept losing the Super Bowl, they felt really good about their drafts too.
Yeah, whatever. I mean, I made the playoffs.
JG's very passionate about this, and I appreciate all the info there. But just before we move on here,
I mean, you guys are looking at me like I don't do this every year, and it doesn't work every year, and it does. So,
yeah, I mean, you've admitted that you don't win the championship in the most competitive league, right? I mean, that's what you've said.
Competitive league.
Now, here's the thing. I agree. I'm not a big that you have to take running backs guy. But wait until the 10th round to go.
I'm not saying that that's the best strategy. I'm saying that you could have a good team, even in that scenario. You could come out with a pretty dang good team. You could,
but that's not the strategy you want to go into it with. You want to go into it with, I'm taking the best player available. That's
right. That's where it's just my point. And ultimately, I will say the 2 players that I'm coming out of drafts with the most right now are Clyde Edwards-Helaire round 1 and Joe Mixon round 2. And I am loving every team I get with those 2 players as my first 2 picks. So I am taking 2 running backs super early and then mostly ignoring the position until the Chase Edmonds, Antonio Gibson's, Tony Pollard range of players who – and Giovanni Bernard, I'm taking on every team that I get Joe Mixon.
And I'm a big believer in just you can get by with 2 running backs, like you said. Yep. It's just the one running back is a little too scary.
I agree.
That's where you lost me.
Especially when you're leagues that have to have 2 running back slots. I mean, you're just that's just idiotic. And the thing that scares me about just having 2 running backs on your roster, and I know you're not exactly advocating for that, is bye weeks. I mean, if you think that you're not going to find in the draft, what?
It's 1 week. You figure it out.
I can tell you how many times in playoffs that I got in based off winning that very last week or coming down scenario where every week was important. I don't know when that week's going to be, and I want to make sure I'm set up every week. You said yourself that it's a week-to-week league. So why are you just going to automatically say, well, I'm just going to give up week 8 when my
I'm not giving up that week. I'm giving myself 8 weeks to find a waiver wire claim or one of these guys, Chase Edmonds, Antonio Gibbs. I mean, I'm not only drafting 2 running backs. I'm drafting 2 running backs in the first 10 rounds and then drafting
one of those 2 guys if you're able to find them in the waiver wires at that point in your season. And I meant that too. Like I targeted Antonio Gibson in like every draft, and he went earlier than I thought he was going to go in both of them. And that's what I get for drafting the people from the state of Tennessee who know who this guy is and saw him in college.
That too, yeah.
So, I mean, one other thing that too. Oh, that's the thing. Know who's in your draft and who they're fans of, college and sport and professional, because that will tell you if Titans are going to go earlier than they should, or if the Tigers are going to go earlier than they should. I don't think Ball's making NFL anymore. But anyway, I digress.
Alvin Kamara.
I'm kidding. When I stood out, he started off at Alabama, so whatever.
But
Greenlaw, I
do.
cut you off. I'm sorry. Hold on. You have
No, I was just going to say that if you wait that long, if you wait till the 10th or the 11th round to get your second running back, what I like to do in those rounds is take more boom bust guys. And if I waited that long to take someone that fills out my starting lineup, I can't take those guys. So that's why I would advocate filling out your starting lineup well before you get to that part of the draft.
That's fair. I do think the best way to draft is to get 2 running backs in the first 2 rounds, just because like every year is different. And this year is super, super top heavy with running back. And then it's a major wasteland. But if your league starts 4 receivers and only 2 running backs, it's a totally different game. So like you have to really look at how your roster is going to be constructed. And I also think I've said this on a previous show, but when you're preparing for your draft, know where you're drafting. If you're playing on CBS, if you're playing on ESPN, if you're playing on Yahoo, the people drafting in your league are going to be heavily influenced by the rankings on that site. And every site has their own rankings, and they sometimes are pretty different. So if you're using like some draft kit that you like paid for on Roto World or wherever, like those rankings are going to be different. And you can looking for where like the experts have guys ranked really high, and your league that you're playing on Yahoo has them ranked 20 spots lower. That doesn't mean you reach 20 spots for a guy. That means you get great value 20 spots later.
So welcome to the Justin Graver Show. I'm kidding.
Oh, come on. I sat here for 10 minutes while you go through your own strategies.
All 3 of us combined got 10
all 3 of us
minutes.
combined. Yes, you're right.
Well, mine was the most analytical approach, so it deserved the most amount of time.
Sure. No, but there was some good advice in there. If you can pick some nuggets out there about what to do. Let me just ask you this before we move on real quick. Just as far as just how many receivers do you want on your roster, and how many running backs would you say you want on your roster? Just give me numbers. Don't go through whole big explanations, but what are your target running backs for your roster that you would?
I always go more wide receivers than running backs.
I do too.
So does that mean you go 7 receivers and 2 running back? Like what do you?
No. I mean, it's very close. I mean, we're talking like 1 or 2 more wide receivers than running backs.
Okay.
If I have like 4 running backs, it's okay. I'm okay with that.
Well, and generally, depending on your roster, if you're playing in one of those leagues where it's 2 running backs, 2 receivers, but if you're playing in one of those that's 2 running backs, 3 receivers, and a flex position, then you're definitely going to want to take more receivers in that kind of situation, or look at it because you've got that extra receiver spot in that potentially.
Yeah. Also, if you're watching on the YouTube, Ryan gave a nice little smirk when he hit that flex button because he knew he hit it so well.
I can hit the post,
just so smug.
The only time he gets it on time is when he gets to do it.
Well,
I'm sure he's got little notes around his computer.
I should host. I had to move the button down because before I was having to reach way up my board to get it, and that's all props. Now it's just right here. I just have to reach up one little finger and get it. So hopefully it'll be better as we go through this, and we're getting better as the show's going on. So
you need to learn to strike hard and strike fast.
Okay, I know you want to go watch Cobra Kai there, Johnny, but is that the guy's name? God, I can't remember.
Johnny Lawrence.
Yeah, Johnny Lawrence.
Sensei Lawrence, please.
Johnny Lawrence. Okay, I'm sorry. Can you ever forgive me?
Yeah, I'll let pass.
Okay, thank you. So some good information there, some good advice. If you've got your drafts coming up, pay attention to what's going on in the news that we've given. Pay attention to the injuries. Mike Williams is going to be out for a few weeks based if you watched our Hard Knock recap. So, but to get us a little bit of fun here as we move forward, we are going to do the Broadway Fantasy League, and we're choosing 4 participants to join us. And it'll be 8 Broadway members, ranging from Slapes and Sloops to Greenlaws to Zach Lyons and to Gravers. I don't even know if those guys are playing in that league.
There will not be Slapes or Sloops.
But Ben Wright and Andy Simmons from Speedway Soccer.
So there's 2 Speedway Soccer guys is the point there. And I just like saying those other 2 names. But we have some entries. Thank y'all so much for going out there and posting all over the place for us to go. Overwhelming response. Next time we ask questions, I want to see the same effort. If you have questions, I want to see the same mailbag.
Oh, we got literally 4 million questions when we asked.
Yeah, we had a lot of questions.
Yeah, but we had 1 billion applicants to this.
4 million.
4 million and 2. I'm sorry. All right. So what I'd like to do here, I think you went through and we were able to vote and pick out our top candidates that we're going to pick from. And I don't know how you want to do this, Graver. I'm going to send it to you if you want to go through the 8 or 7 or 6 finalists or whatever you've got there in front of you and give their names. And then we can go through. And Zach, I'm going to turn it over to you, and I'm going to let you to go through some of them, okay?
Well, do you want me to go through the ones that we're not going to use?
Yeah, before we get to our 7 finalists, we do have some guys that I think Zach wants to just let you know in the nicest possible way that we're sorry.
We're
going in another direction.
Listen, I'm just going to name the names, and if you hear your name called, you are not in the top 7. I think that's the best way to go about it. So the first one is James Esperanza. He is not going to be in. We're not going to have Patrick Bodego. He's not going to be in. Kyle Harpoon is not going to be in. Ronald Sanderpants is not going to be in. We have Roman Lavender. I mean, I'm not even going to make a name up for him because that's just a funny name. Bill Seagraves. He's not going to be in. And I think Timmy Reaper, not going to be in.
So you definitely named at least one, if not more, people that are a finalist.
But did I?
I think Ronan is the only.
No, I didn't say Ronan. I didn't say Ronan.
No, he said Roman.
Roman Lavender.
Oh, okay.
Not so Ronan, the accuser, whatever. The
destroyer.
Other guy, Ronan Briscoe.
Spoiler alert. Ronan Brad Kessel, you're one of the
finalists. Congrats. Well, speaking of finalists, why don't we just get to it, huh? So our 7 finalists. Thank you, everybody who went to the Broadway Sports forums on BroadwaySportsMedia.com, where you can sign up for a free membership to participate in the forums, or get a Broadway Pro All Access Pass, and you can access the premium forums, which is where this was actually posted. But because we got 17 entries in the non-premium forum category as well, we've decided to open it to those participants, and we will be reading some of those. But we do have 5 of our finalists from the premium forum and 2 from the other. So without further ado, our first finalist is Craig Wiley, who had a great response we'll get to in a second. Our second, Ronan Briscoe. Congrats. We've already mentioned your name. Bryce.
I've never mentioned Ronan.
I did multiple times. Bryce Streusel. Chris. We don't know how to say your name, Bryce, but congrats on being a finalist. Alex Law. And after reading your entry, I don't think Law is really your last name. And we have 2.
Well, we can't have any fake names.
Malone is one from the Malone. No last name there, just Malone, like Madonna, I guess.
Or maybe no first name.
Hey, good point.
Maybe it's Carl Malone.
Post Malone.
And then we got somebody with 2 last. We have no last name there or first name. Now we got 2 last names with Addison Dew McKenney. So I realized I only named 6. Whoever my 7th one was, I forgot who you were. So we have 6 finalists.
Congratulations on being a finalist, though, to that 7th person.
Yeah, you clearly didn't make it.
If you didn't hear your name when Zach read him, you were probably the 7th finalist.
There you go. Everybody gets to have the hope that maybe that was them now, you know? So we're just
my God.
Everywhere.
I'll tell you who it wasn't. James Esperanza.
It definitely wasn't.
Definitely wasn't.
So I'm going to read Malone's entry first here. Now, Malone went with a very simple approach. No heading, no good afternoon, gents, like Evan Harris did. And I apologize to Evan Harris, but I literally read Go Vols to finish your entry and decided that I didn't want to play fantasy football with you. I apologize for that minor disqualification, but there's only one UT where I come from, hook 'em horns. So Malone started with the numbers. He got 4 numbers. 1, I got a strong name game. 2, I participated in the highs of receiving large amounts of money for winning and also the embarrassments of coming in last. 3, all of my old leagues have disbanded throughout the year, so I don't have anyone to play with this year. And 4,
sad.
I was the first commenter ever on BSM. Y'all owe me this.
For a guy who has no friends, for him to be bold enough to say, y'all owe me this, oof. I don't know. I don't know if I like that.
I feel
hubris.
sorry for Malone. Here's
my biggest problem. Are we going to give out pity invites? Are we a pity league, though?
He said he has a strong name
curse
game.
on us.
Yeah, I don't know what that means.
and he didn't give us any examples of his strong name game, and he only has one name.
Well, that's how strong it is. He just needs one name.
Just needs the one.
Yeah.
So Greenlaw, you're worried about if he joins our league, it will become disbanded because all the
Yeah,
other
I
leagues
feel like there's a curse associated with Malone.
So let me ask you this: as we read them out, are you going to go one by one, and we're going to give our final reaction through the Macho Man or through the Felba, or are we going to
No,
go? Through all
we're
of
just
them?
going to go through all of them, talk about them, and then I think JG's going to give us
Get a
the
vote.
final four. Or
All right,
vote.
So
that's fine.
Addison, do
Let's go next
McKinney's. Sorry, what was that?
Oh, also, this guy's won a lot of money, so I mean,
True.
does he
He's
need more
experienced
money?
The highs.
Hey,
of winning
listen,
the
nothing
money.
is as valuable as friendship.
That's true, Zach.
I
And that's
appreciate
why we
it.
made this
He's
podcast.
piss poor in friendship, let me tell you.
Okay, moving on to Addison's entry. Good day, all. It is I, your future fantasy champion. I believe you should nominate me as your pick so that you all can cower beneath the weight of my 2 fantasy championships from last season and maybe even get some tips on how to really fantasy football. Even though I've never been in Nashville for more than 3 hours, I have been a lifelong... Yeah, out? You're out? I liked the creativity.
I want to hear the
Keep
rest
going.
of it. I want to hear the rest of it.
All right. I was digging the approach. This is obviously a choice to be very full of arrogance here in this approach, but I've been a Live on Titans fan and avidly read any Titans content put out by you guys or others. So almost a compliment, but really he'll read anything. I coach college football at Westminster College in Missouri, and our season is currently suspended, so I need another league championship to quell my thirst for football. I'll talk very respectful crap, and at the very least, even if I don't win, which is unlikely, I'll beat the Colts fan. I swear that upon my honor.
All right, I'm
Good
back
day,
now.
sirs. And as Ocho Cinco once said, I love you.
Ooh, I like the end with the I love you because I
do.
love love.
Also, I think I've seen how the Colts fan drafts, and I think this guy would beat him in our league should he be selected.
Listen,
point.
Malone with no friends could beat Ben.
Sloops and Slapes could beat Ben.
Yeah.
All right, who's our next entry?
Agreed. Strong entry there from Addison. Intimidating, but strong. All
I
right,
mean, I'm
moving
not
on to
intimidated. It may be intimidated to those that never win a championship, but for me, I'm not
Running theme on this
intimidated.
podcast tonight.
Man,
Next entry comes
JG
from
is
Craig
taking a
Wiley.
beating tonight.
You know, it's all going to be worth it when I beat all of you in this league that we play in this year.
Yeah, when you draft your second running back in the 11th round, I'm sure.
Wow, Joe Mixon's going to be available in the 11th round.
Okay, all right, who's next?
Craig Wiley, I would like to join the fantasy league. I deserve to join because I am already followed on Twitter at CasualTitanFan3 by Half the Flex podcast. Zach and Ryan are slacking. I am
Hold on.
basically the 5th member.
I have been following him for quite some time.
Who is this?
Oh, we're gonna have a little beef
So
with Craig
or
Wiley.
you can tweet me after you've listened to this show, but I've been following you for a little bit now. I don't really
Maybe
say,
he.
but I hit follow, and I am a follower of yours.
Little
All
bit
right,
of a
maybe he was
rivalry already, calling Ryan a liar.
Maybe he was confused by the Twitter handle change.
Okay,
Maybe he
what's
went to
this guy's name?
Craig Wiley at Casual Titan Fan
Oh,
3.
yeah.
Look at the shout out
the
this guy
the
gets.
DGB guy,
Yes.
right?
This is the DGB guy. I am basically the 5th member of the podcast. Check my Twitter bio. And I've never been in a really serious fantasy football league, even though I'm a huge football fan. I will try to draft Kenyon Drake, though. So if you want him, keep that in mind.
Hmm.
For letting us know.
Ooh, that's
Strong entry from Craig Wiley. All right, let's move on to our next guy. Ronan Briscoe. At long last, we get to your entry after lots of teasing. I would like entry because, as we all know, the best attribute a prospect can have is youth and a high ceiling. That's 2 attributes. It's fine. I'll let it go. In my auction PPR Keeper League, with some of the area's best high school coaches, I've improved my roster each of the last 3 years to go on a playoff run this past year. I'm 19, so there's the youth part. And I'd also like to point out that I always seem to catch a team's worst week of the season, so prepare for a frustrating weekend 1 to 2 times a year. I also finished 2nd this past year in the Reddit/Tennessee r/Tennessee Titans Discord League 2. So not good enough for number 1, but 2 he did. get
Sounds
second
like a
place.
JG clone here.
There we go. Maybe that's why I like this guy. I also will most likely pick a Titan way too high, and then they don't perform. So there's that. You'll know which Titans aren't likely to perform based on who I pick.
yeah, but do we want Titans not to perform? That's a little dangerous.
Can you stay away from Derrick
Right.
Henry and AJ Brown, please?
I don't think that
Yeah,
guy. I don't think him being in our league is going to have any impact on whether the Titans players perform. It's just if he drafts them at all.
So if he is in the league, he is not allowed to draft any Titans, is what you're telling me.
Maybe he just needs to stay away from Titans just to be safe.
He could
Let's move on to
draft,
Bryce
yeah.
Strussel. Bryce, I want you to tweet at us how to pronounce your name. I need a very phonetic spelling. All right. Hey guys, love the flex and listen often. I would love to join the league considering I'm a young fantasy guru. I have won my league 3 out of 5 years, 10-person league PPR. I know I'm perfect for this league considering how much I know that you guys know about fantasy and how much I enjoy playing. P.S. I think I saw you at the Life Store last week, Justin.
That's a good callback. So
That's a
Bryce is
very good
automatically
callback.
in.
Honestly,
callback.
this is an overall very, very weak entry. But that last
That made
sentence, endings are everything. Endings
yeah.
are all important.
That's what I'm going to
And-
remember. So he
It's
had
like the
I
"I love you" from Madison.
Yeah.
Are
I'll
we
always
going
remember
as far as to say
Addison.
this guy is not a finalist anymore? He's just in?
Well, I don't know. We don't know how young he is. He said I was young, but the other guy gave us his age. We have no idea how young this guy is.
This is a
Can you
slippery
really
slope. I do
admit
not wanna
someone
go
when you
down.
don't know
We'll
how
just-
young they are?
Hold
All
on.
right.
Just
We got one left.
We got one left.
move past that.
Alex Law, if that is your real name, after I read this, you'll know why I say that, says, I'd love to join. I'm from Philly and currently live in Charlottesville, Virginia, but I am a diehard Titans fan. I'm 29 and am currently in law school. It was fun to win my fantasy leagues last year on the back of Tana Thrill, The King, The Future, AJ, and Jonnu the Body Smith. But this year, everyone bid me up and would not let me pick Titans players without sabotaging my budget. In a very 2020 turn of events, I was only able to hang on to Jonnu on my squads, but I still like my chances. Still, I'm excited about it. I'd love to be the non-Nashville person in the league and would be happy to travel to Nashville for a league meetup when COVID makes that possible. I usually come to town every year for a game, Hattie B's and Loveless Biscuits. Also, it would be fun to get back into a snake draft league. A fun fact about my Titans fandom. Freshman year at NYU, we were asked to put our favorite celebrity on our dorm room door as an icebreaker. Back in 2009, you know I picked the Fish and his glorious mustache. No one got it, which was great.
Pretty strong entry.
That's some spoiler
Boy,
if he thinks we're
Pretty
all-
strong entry, pretty weak food choices.
Let's just say
Well-
that there are multiple non-Nashvillians
Yes.
on this podcast already.
JG and I are not in Nashville, believe it or not. We're not sitting in a recording studio with Ryan and Zach. They are.
Ryan is not in Nashville either.
Technically, you're right.
Well, he's
I'm
closer
the
than
only
JG and I.
Nashville guy
This
here.
picture I took of the Los Angeles skyline on my cell phone.
And
Pretty
this
good
picture I took
photography.
of my
How's the
basement
bragging cam going?
in St. Louis, Missouri.
And
All right.
Ryan took that picture of his background out in outer space.
Anyway.
And you will see our backgrounds if you watch us on YouTube. All right.
on
we got-
YouTube. So let's get to it. So you had some great entries there, and let me say this: we poke fun. Thank you everybody who did enter, and it wasn't one of those things where we had to just pick 4, and we're limited to that. We would love to have taken everybody, but we had to break it down to 4. So we joke and we jest about they go Vols got you, but it is what it is, and so don't take too much offense to it. And
You literally
congratulations.
did not get picked because you're a volunteer. Fan. Don't listen to me.
You saw. I'm trying to keep listeners here. Anyway. So, but congratulations to our 4 who did make it through, who didn't piss us off enough to just ignore them.
and they are,
Craig Wiley,
okay,
Alex Law,
okay.
Bryce Strussels,
I'm into
And-
this.
Ronan. Whatever.
Ronan, we got the young guy, huh? Wait, do we have 2 young
We
guys?
have 2 young guys. Wow.
Wow.
I'm not going to go any more into that, but
Would you
we
stop
got
with
2
that?
young guys.
No matter what, Addison, I love you too.
Yeah, I am
Go
really
stronger.
sad that Malone did not make our cut because he's not going to be able to play with anyone this year.
Yeah,
Oh.
I am.
Jeez,
I
that
am
was
a little sad
depressing.
about that.
So
But
here's what we're going to do. We're going
I'm
to tweet
sorry.
out there that Malone needs a fantasy league, and somebody's going to let him in, right? Let's use
Yeah.
the power of Twitter and get this guy in a fantasy league.
Yeah, maybe.
Hey,
He will curse
Malone-
your league, though, if you add him.
I have
True.
seen 4 or 5 entries in the past few days from people looking for fantasy players in some of the Tennessee Titans chats. So go check those out as well. And that's on Facebook, I should say. Excuse me, on Facebook if you're a member of that social media.
If you find a league on Facebook and you don't win it, you don't deserve to be in our league
Also-
anyway.
Also, another
Malone,
person who's
destroyer
in-
of worlds.
Oh, so once again, Congratulations to. Sorry for cutting your joke off there, Greenlaw.
No, I was gonna say our good friend James is gonna be looking for a league, so
Yeah.
maybe
Look up
maybe
James
he can join.
Esperanza.
There you go. There's your second
That's
person in your league, Malone. Go hit up James
At South Texas Titan.
at South Texas Titan and ask him to join a league. Then go from there. So I'm sure he's gonna want to play.
Nice little
Listen, James, all
two-person
he's got
league.
is cats in his apartment, so he needs friends too.
He's got some snakes in there.
Yeah. Well, that doesn't make it
Forget
any
about the
better.
Do you think he's ever had a snake eat a cat? Why did I?
He's only had the
Not
one
yet.
cat. I just saw
Not
today
yet.
that cat is still around, so he's doing good. And that cat is awesome. So
It was a rescue,
I'll
by
make
the
fun of
way.
the cat.
Props to
Yeah,
James.
props to James. All joking aside. So, but congratulations to our 4 winners: Craig, Alex, Bryce, and Ronan. We'll get everything tweeted out. We'll get everything set up and reach out to y'all. But congratulations. Thanks for making the cut. Thanks for taking the time to enter. Thank you to everybody else that entered. But guys, Zach's got to get to Cobra Kai. He's got to go punch in the air some more. And I love it every time. So that's going to do it. That's going to wrap all this up, and we're going to tie a nice bow on it. Remember to be sure and check out all the other podcasts, articles that Broadway Sports has to offer at BroadwaySportsMedia.com. Follow on Twitter at BroadwayTN and the show at Flex on Broadway. Follow Zach at FWordsPod, JG at Titans Film Room, and Greenlaw at Rob on Broadway. Also check out on Facebook and Instagram and follow Broadway there. Remember to subscribe and rate 5 stars, but see you next time, Flexers. Go chop some wood, Zach.
We did it, bros. That's it for
And
preseason shit. We got
just over and
Hey,
over.
week 1!
Week 1 is next. God.
A Broadway Sports Media production.